Hi, I'm Courtney Webster, and this is Your Recovered Life. And today I'm really happy to be joined by Tim Harrington. I'm going to give you a little bit of his backstory, and then he's going to fill you in on the details. In April of 2001, while living in his beat-up Honda Civic in Malibu, he hit his personal bottom with the disease of addiction. When his last resort to bail him out refused to, he went to the last house on the block in Santa Monica, where he had his conversion moment while reading How It Works from the podium. In June 2002, at 1 year of recovery, Tim started working at a treatment center. It was here he was introduced to the concept of a sober companion. In 2008, Tim co-founded Sustainable Recovery, Inc. to provide custom, one-on-one confidential support to those in early recovery or those that are still struggling with sobriety. He is trusted by high-profile clients, professionals, and treatment centers to provide support in many different phases of recovery. His specialty is bringing recovery home and on the road and finding the resources to meet the individual needs of each client. Tim lives near Aspen, Colorado with his phenomenal wife and two amazing daughters. So welcome, Tim. I'm so glad you could be here, and thanks for agreeing to have a conversation with me.
Hi, Courtney.
Okay.
Good to be here.
Cool. So the first question I like to ask is, have you found your calling?
Yes.
Good. That's a good start. And so what is it?
My calling is, and over time it's changed, but it is today, just for today, is to advocate for recovery, is to be an advocate. That is first and foremost what I feel like is my calling. And I get to do that professionally, but I'm very excited about doing it in my own community. Advocating for recovery so as to reduce stigma. I think this is one of the biggest issues that we face as a recovering community. Considering that, there's about 23 million people somewhere in there that would qualify for addiction treatment, and about 1 million of them maybe get treatment. So, and there's a variety of reasons why, but I think that, for myself, I had stigma myself, for myself. But that was due to ignorance, not really understanding, and just, never anybody really, there was nothing in the community that said, it's okay, there's help. It was always like the opposite, like, you're a bad person, or, I thought that, or I perceived that. And then I just needed to get my, stuff together. Mm-hmm. And so as I sit here today, after being in recovery for 12 and a half years, I can say that I know a lot more about the disease of addiction. I know a lot more about the variety of challenges that people face to reach recovery. And so I feel like that's my calling, is to sort of break that down and talk about it, talk about my own recovery, and then talk about, how others can achieve it in the public.
Cool. So that's like and I'm so glad you're doing that. That's like, yes, we need more people doing that. And so if that's like the umbrella of what your calling is, how does that manifest? Like, what do you do? So, because if somebody's watching this, right, and they're like, well, that's cool, but what do you do every day? Or what's your job? Like, you have this great company. So what do you do?
Every single day, I join community through social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, different groups within Facebook, and I carry that message. I carry the message of that recovery is real, recovery is possible. There's a variety of pathways to get there, and if you have any questions, call me.
Cool. Right. Got it. And so people hire you to help them get into treatment, and then after treatment?
Yeah, they'll hire me as somebody who is post-treatment. I'm also an interventionist, trained interventionist, so I can get them from the very beginning and walk them through the treatment process, and have them. I'd like to be involved with the families for the minimum of a year. That's just a really good start for a recovery plan.
It's great to hear this like passion, and you're an advocate, and here's how you show up and you help people, and you've got a great idea about different ways, and I love your passion for it. It's fantastic. And I also have seen you on social media with your message, and there's times when I'm like, I'm sharing that, and amen, it's great. So you are out there doing it. And so what I want to find out is how you got there.
All right.
Right? So walk us through.
So I was born in Kansas in 1965.
So why don't you start us after that conversion moment?
Yeah.
We get sober, we get into recovery, and then what?
I had other moments. I think we all have moments. It's sort of we're the sum of all the parts. So I had a lot of fits and starts in my life. I had a lot of um, dark times and then I had some really, really not so dark times. So, it's sort of like my career, my addiction career, if you want to call it that, was, like this. And so all the while striving for some kind of balance because this is uncomfortable. This is really struggling. This is suffering. There's a lot of, there's a lot of darkness in that. So coming to the moment where I was living in my car, it was like, it was like being out of plans. I didn't really have any more. That's not true. I did have plans. They were just really, really bad plans. They were just, I even think of them, I think of myself thinking of them then because it's very clear to me that very last week. And it was like, you're going to do what? I was like laughing at myself in my car where I lived. And I finally resigned myself to the fact that I should go back to a place that there was some glimmer of hope, that I do remember hope existed. And so I think, that's the very catalyst, I think, for any person's recovery is hope. I really, really believe that. And so wherever that hope takes you is great. It may take you to Celebrate Recovery. It may take you to Smart Recovery. It may take you to a doctor. It doesn't really matter. So it took me to the meeting, the last House on the Block meeting. I read it and I freaked out, and it was like, I felt like Albert Brooks in broadcast news. I was like, just flop sweating. And then, so I had a change. I did feel a change. And so from there, it became like, okay, how am I going to sustain this change? I didn't use that language then, but it was like, so how do I navigate now that I know that I can't drink and use, and that's off the table for me? I realized that solution is not working for me. So I have to find out, how do I navigate the world without that as being my default of dealing with stress, disappointment, and all that stuff? What do I do now? Do I just come and hang out with you people? Go to meetings, drink bad coffee, and eat, cheap cookies? Mm-hmm. I was like, okay, well, I can do that for a while, I guess. But I got to get a job, and I got to get stuff. I got to have things. This is my point of view 12 years ago. So how am I going to navigate? How am I going to get that stuff? Because right now I feel like a failure. I feel like I'm not qualified to do that. I may never get the stuff that I want.
That's how you were feeling at that time.
Oh, yeah. I was like, because I'm looking now. I'm doing what a lot of people do in early recovery, and that's comparing my insides with everybody's highlight reel, and that's painful. That's debilitating. That sucks.
Right. And I think people other than, I find myself doing it sometimes, and I got 12 years, and I'm sometimes like, oh, that looks really great on Facebook, and I'm like, whoa, right? It can happen.
Oh, shiny object. It's like.
Well, and it looks like, just like you're saying, comparing our insides to the highlight reel. I just think I love that people call it that now, because that's what it is. That's what we're sharing. So anyway, that's a little aside, but.
Right. And to compare is to despair. That causes disparity, and that causes, that's not doing wonders for one's self-esteem. So, and this is weird how my higher power works in my life, the universal source of everything, whatever that is. Decided to pair me off with somebody who had literally everything. Thing being the operative word. But couldn't stay sober for the life of them. And so I was shown this sort of thing, because if you'd have seen my wall, like the blank wall that I decorated in my college dorm back in the 80s, it had yachts and models and fast cars and New York City and bright lights, and that's what I wanted, and fame and all that kind of stuff. That was going to fix me. I had that shaped hole in my perception, and so that was my goal. However, I was, cut off at the knees by alcoholism and addiction along that path, and it seemed always out of reach. I was like this. And that can cause a lot of dark moments. That can cause depression, and it did in me for sure. And so I was paired with this person who had everything, 50 million in the bank, and the house on the hill, and the adoration of millions, and all of that stuff. And so it really highlighted in me the lesson is, after it was happening to me, was that, none of that stuff can sustain recovery. You can't buy it. It doesn't come with a TV show or a movie or anything like that.
How did you even start working in treatment? Can you kind of do a broad stroke story about what happened
Yeah, somebody said you should, and I said, how do you know that? And so I did.
Okay.
Because I didn't have I had no other idea what I was going to do. I mean, I did have some ideas, but people kept saying that's probably not a good idea. And that is like opening your own private, semi-private club on Sunset.
Okay.
As a newly recovering person with 3 months of sobriety.
Mm-hmm. They discouraged that.
They discouraged that, okay. Yes, very lovingly. Is this an adult show? Oh, okay. But anyway, so I worked in it, and I was like, oh, I love this. Okay. And then I was like, well, I can't work for $12 an hour and have a family and support a family. I've got to, where can this go from here, from a program tech to something else? So I got back into that. There was a flux, and somebody said, hey, you want to make a lot of money? And I was like, yeah. So I went and worked on this sales job for a while, and it was about 2.5 years. So I'd done the treatment thing, and I was like, I'm going to try something else. And I tried this, and it was this sales gig, and I ended up at like 2 years, like almost 2.5 years of sobriety. I ended up on the floor of my studio apartment in Beverly Hills, and the most pain I had ever been in post recovery. I remember this feeling when I was drinking and using, because I was at the lowest I'd ever been, but I wasn't expecting to feel this way when I was in recovery. I had assumed those days had gone, and it snuck up on me, and I was like, that's it. I'm going to leave. I'm leaving Tameem, and I'm going to drink. I'm going to cut and run. I'm just going to disappear. And my girlfriend, who became my wife, said, just call one other person. So I did, and that person said, well, I understand what you're going through. However, God moves mountains, but you got to bring a shovel, sort of thing. And I cleaned it up. He said some more direct language than that. and it was very hurtful at first. It stung, I guess. And I was like, nobody talks to me like that. Nobody puts baby in the corner. And then there was this overwhelming sense of like, oh wow, that's it. And what that it is to me is that you have to do some things that you may not want to do as a part of the journey towards your destiny, where you're going to be uncomfortable. That was another conversion moment. That was another surrender. And I remember people talking about there'll be multiple surrenders. Mm-hmm. That's been my experience.
Right.
And so I decided to go back and work in treatment, and just, and then things opened up. Somebody,
So
said,
why did you decide to do that?
Well, because that meant a lot to me.
Okay.
I had a connection to that, as opposed to the sales job, which the end result was going to be, maybe some financial success, but no bliss. So that's what I've always wanted to connect with. That isn't a new concept for me, whether I was using or whether I was in recovery. The concept was always connecting with something that made me happy. Now I found something that I did connect with, and that was helping other people. And that's, and I know tons of other people that feel the same way. That's what they've connected with in recovery, is whether they have a different job, they've worked service into the job.
So it's the service part. Cool.
It's the service part. Ultimately, it does come down to that. I think that's what we're hardwired to do.
So I'm curious what the question is. Like, what question did you ask yourself at that moment when you're like, okay, I got to pick up a shovel? Where did you go to? What are the questions you asked to give yourself the answer of a direction?
I didn't really have any questions. It was more like, I heard people giving me direction that resonated with me at that point when I was at another surrender or another bottom, or whatever you want to call it. And so at that point, there was more willingness to just take an action rather than ask more questions.
So they were saying, go to where your bliss is, go to what makes you feel good.
Are you doing what makes you happy? And I was like, no, not at all.
Hmm.
Not even a little bit.
Hmm.
In fact, it just makes me unhappy.
And so I'm gonna actually suggest that there was a question that you asked yourself, which was, well, what does make me happy?
But the answers that I would have, my pat answers,
Uh-huh.
they were still not working. So it had to be, and to me, that's the uncomfortable part. It's like, you know, again, it's not really necessarily the result because, my conditioning and my teachings has been to stay out of the results and to be in the moment and be here now and then have some faith that, you know, whatever happens is going to be the right thing for you. So I have to take off the table a lot of times what I think I need or what I think I want. My needs and wants. I mean, this is a thing that I think we as humans deal with all the time. So it's like, are my needs being met? I had a sponsor who would always say, "So, do you have money in your pocket? Do you have food? Do you have a roof over your head? Blah blah blah." And I would say, "Yeah, but not enough. Not the right house. Not the right car. Everything comes with conditions."
Hmm.
And those conditions cause a lot of pain. So I had to, part of this last surrender was to surrender the expectation of what I thought again was going to fill me up.
Do you want to find a calling? Did you feel like there was something you were supposed to
Yeah.
do or that you wanted to have a calling, or was there any of that?
What I've come around to is exactly what I thought was my calling years and years and years ago.
Which
But
is,
there's a conspiracy of the self in a lot of ways I believe in my story, and that is like, yeah, that's all good, but it's like that's not going to get me, the outside approval stuff. You know what I mean? Like I was connected with the idea of being connected to other people. However, it seemed like I get back to that later once I had all the cash and prizes.
mhm.
So there was a long gap in between, me having some idea and some connection with what it was that brought me joy. But as my disease or my disease grew, I got further away from that. And then certainly when I found drugs and alcohol, and I voluntarily took drugs and alcohol, I wasn't forced to take them, but they lead you somewhere because my reaction to them was unlike lots of people's reactions. They were particular to who I am. So they took me on a ride, and that ride took me off the path that I think, you know, that I eventually came back to.
Cool.
Is the way it feels like to me now that we're talking about it. It's like I came full circle.
Hmm. Hmm. So you started work. So you started working in treatment again, and so to
Yeah.
kind of, so what? So how did you get from going back, like I don't know what I'm doing, and going back to work in treatment because people are telling me to
Well,
just,
yeah.
to now? What happened?
So somebody called me and said, "Will you work on this movie with me as my onset assistant?" And I said, "Yeah, that's great. Let's do that." And it was
And that
like,
is supporting their sobriety.
"Yeah,
Okay.
yeah." He was a friend of mine, but it was also sort of unsaid that I would be a support person. But for that, because we both, we're both the same, so we could connect on that level. Um, so after that, I got a job with a person who is a broker of said services in Los Angeles, and I worked for them for several years. I can't even think now. I'm so bad with timelines. Still terrible with that. And then that job ended when I asked this person if I could move to Colorado and get out of LA and raise my kids here. She said, "No problem. You can still work for me, and that's great." And 3 months, 2 months, about 2 months after I was here, she said that it wasn't going to work out. So that was the catalyst that ended up creating what I have now because I was just thrown into I basically felt like the bottom had dropped out because here I am, a father with a husband and two kids. And so I really went into I mean, what a crazy time that was. Every once in a while, Rob and I will talk about it. It was like, I just basically I freaked out.
Yeah. I don't know if you can hear it, but there's sirens going down the street, and I'm just like, they're just like perfect background for you, like,
Yeah.
and then.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, I did need, I mean, I felt like it was so messed up. I was so angry. I was so like, what is happening? What kind of test is this? I'm not ready for this test. This is not cool. And, one of the lessons I've learned, there's a cliche like God gives you no more than you can handle. And I don't think that's true. I think he gives us a little more than we can handle, because that really calls me to task. And that also invites me to ask others to join the fight. Because what I want to do is I want to handle it my own, because I'm shamed now. I'm feeling shame. I'm triggered about, I'm a failure. I should have known. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. All these different things come up. So what life is asking me is to put all that aside and just show up, and that's what I did. So at that point, all that I've learned in recovery, I'm the sum of all the parts and all the lessons and all the cliches and all the experience, and that's what that's for. So when things happen that seem unfair, that's what you have. Because guess what? I'm probably going to have another moment.
I know. But we have the experience of having gone through them that we get to go, oh, wait, I've used this muscle before.
Yeah.
Well, it's not usually that quick that I'm reminded of it. Usually I struggle a little bit and get mad and then go, wait, right? So there's some perspective. That's brilliant. I love how you shared how that it wasn't just a straight line of, yeah, I started, and then that there was a, oh my God, everything just kind of blew up. Did you think about quitting, or did you think about changing your mind, or was there anything like that going on?
No, it was pretty strong inside me that this is what I knew I wanted to do. Now, speaking of a straight line, it was like, now I have to completely establish myself as somebody that other people can trust to do this. Because when you're in a broker situation, it's that person's reputation is on the line, and their credibility. So now I have to establish that for myself. So that's what that was my struggle, and that was something that was definitely going to take time, because those kinds of things take time. So in the meantime, what am I going to do? What do I have to do? I have to support my family. I have to show up for them. And so, I eventually took a retail job so I could have income coming in while, yeah. And that was hard, because it was, that was shaming, and that was like, that went to my ego, and, it was really tough. But it ends up, it always ends up that you're always in the right place, because I was able to help a lot of people while I was there. Mm-hmm. Just being who I was. So, go figure.
Right. I love that you share that. I love that you share that, because it's your story, but it also is really human, and it's showing up and just continuing to. I mean, I hate sometimes saying the cliches, but doing the next right indicated action was, you needed to take care of your family. You need to be making some money, and so what do you need to do? And so you did that.
I just did it, and it was huge, swallowing pride and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I mean, that is what creates character. It's there's a great line somebody said to me a long time ago. They were like, "I'd rather have character than be a character." Mm-hmm. And it was like, for me, it was like, no, it's okay. I'll just be a character.
Yeah.
And so, because that was a defense. That was a way to hide. And so certainly, if I had made a different choice, other than the one that's the hardest one at the time, I would be in a completely different place right now, because the amount of pressure I was feeling at that time was tremendous. Mm-hmm. And it was the fact that I didn't crack, thinking back on it now is amazing to me, because it was the way that I was perceiving it was I was pretty hopeless at that time. I'm just glad I just kept showing up.
Yeah, cool. So you took the job you needed to keep the money coming in, and you kept building your business and creating your own enterprise. Yeah. Yep.
Just kept on doing that at the same time.
And then money. So because I want to kind of get us to. So then people started paying you to do what you were really wanting to do, and then you got to stop doing retail. And now you're this guy with your own company and people working for you.
Yep.
I kind of fast forwarded through that, but that's
no,
about
but
it, right?
that's how it happened.
Cool. That's amazing. What do you, I'm so grateful that, I'm saying it again, but I am so grateful that you're sharing all of the, kind of the not pretty parts along the way, because when we see people who have found their calling and they seem like, Tim, if I was to look at you, just look at your Facebook page, I'd be like, man, that guy's really, you've got it figured out. You've got a message, you've got a personality, but so we look at that and we go, I don't know how I would ever do that. So to have to pull the curtain back and say, this is what it looked like. It wasn't always pretty. And I love that you include that and you know what? It's probably not going to look pretty again.
Right, right. And I think, again, that goes to the idea of building character is, the truth of everyone's story is always the same. And that is that, if you're lucky enough to look back and be able to share that you were going through hell and you didn't stop, kind of thing. I mean, that's the kind of legacy that I think anybody would want, because it's not always the outcome. You know what I mean? Because if I'm truthful, it's like wherever I am right now it's just where I am now, and I'm going somewhere else. I haven't landed anymore. This is not it. So for me, it's like my destiny. What my destiny is asking of me is just to keep going. I use an example on my iPad. Like the iPad is like a square block in a city, and so I say on the long block is me, or in this case, this person I'm talking to, and then on the short block is destiny. And so what life is asking of us is to keep walking, because although we can't see what this is, we don't know what it is, we can't quantify it. It's asking me to just keep going regardless, and just keep moving towards this next moment in your life where you're going to have the moment of clarity, the aha moment. You're like, and the sweat on your brow, and you're going to say, oh, I'm so glad I didn't stop.
Great.
And that's my life.
Don't stop. So,
yeah, don't stop. Keep moving forward. I say it all the time. Just keep moving forward.
So with that, you've given so many great messages, but I always like to ask if there's anything that you would want to tell somebody who is in this part of, maybe they've got their, what do they call it, sobriety job, or like early recovery, or they got, like for me, I got sober and I was working the job, I was working TV production, but I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do long term. There was something calling, but something was calling me, but I had no idea what it was. So if there was somebody in that place and they're watching this, what would you want to tell them?
You think you know, but you have no idea. Just stay out of the thought that you know. You don't know.
But they want to know.
Well, then just stay tuned.
No, I want to hear more.
I can't. It's like the story of the guy who's carrying this big bag of shit, and that is his life. And it's stinky, and it's ugly, and it's shameful, and there's a lot of guilt, but you don't drop it. Why? Why don't you drop it?
Because it's your bag.
Because it's your bag. It doesn't matter that it's weighing you down and all that stuff. And then you meet somebody on the road that says, if you drop that bag, I promise that if you drop the rock, drop the bag, whatever metaphor you want to use, that you'll have a wonderful life. And then somebody like me goes, how wonderful? I don't need to know how wonderful. All I need to know is that I got to drop the rock. I got to let go. And then I got to stay tuned. And I got to stay on the path, and I got to stay moving forward. There's so much out of my control, but I can control that. I can stay on the path, on the beam, and I can do that. It's going to be uncomfortable, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to, but that's life. Mm-hmm. So stay tuned. Okay. Don't let go. Don't change the channel. Just stay tuned. You'll get more signs. In between the signs that are going to reinvigorate your faith, they're going to be your challenges. but you'll get another sign. You don't know when, you don't know what it's going to be. You don't know. Stop thinking you have to know.
Perfect. Tim, this was awesome. You heard so many, at the end sometimes I'll say, well, so what would you say? And people can wrap it up in a little bit of a bow. And you've given so many, like there's so many bow wrapped presents along the way of a message of just your experience and encouragement for if somebody's in the same place by you sharing your experience. And it really was experience, strength, and hope. So thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you. It's good to see you.
Great. And for doing what you're doing in the world too. It rocks.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
All right.